So section 2.3 is about really graphical analysis. You're looking at a graph and getting information off of it. The height of the graph of the function is the value of the function, and we refer to the value of the function as the y value. So in example 1, the value of the function at x equals 1, so I come over here on the x-axis to the number 1, is, in this case, 0. All right, that's the y value. So fancy talk, the way we would say this would be f of 1, instead of f of x, it's f of 1 equals 0. So find the value of the function at x equals 4. So you count up, and our value is 2. So f of 4 is 2. And then the value of the function at x equals 6. And again, going up. So we're looking at 4. So in this case, f of 6 is 4. It's not too hard. The net change. Now, we've talked about net change before. There was a formula for that. The net change is f of b minus f of a, the difference in your y values. All right, so in this case, remember b represents the bigger x value. So f of 3 minus f of 1. So we go to our graph, find out what f of 3 is. 2, 3, 4. F of 1, we already said, was 0. So the net change between those two x values is just the number 4. So the solutions of f of x equals 0. Remember, another name for f of x is y. So we're looking for the x-intercepts. When you let y equal 0, you're finding x-intercepts. So the solutions of this function, or the x-intercepts, are, and again we just look at the graph here, are at x equals 1 and x equals 5, 6, 7. So 1 and 7. Those are the solutions. The solutions of the inequality, where is f of x greater than or equal to 0, the set of x values which the graph is either on or above the x-axis. Again, we're looking for where are your y values either equal to 0 or positive numbers. So when I look back at my graph here, y equals 0 is right here, and anything above that, my y values are going to be positive values. So when I give an answer, I'm giving it in interval notation. Where does it start and where does it stop on the x-axis? So it starts at x equals 1, and it stops at x equals 7. And because there's an equals on the inequality, equals, remember, means brackets on our answer. All right, so if it's strictly greater than 0, we're just looking at where is it above the x-axis. So still 1 to 7. From x is 1 to x is 7, your graph is above, it's all above the x-axis here, right, where y equals 0. All right, so we just can't be on the x-axis. So if we can't use the number 1, I have to put a parenthesis on both ends, 1 and 7. Again, no equals, no brackets. So if they were asking where is f of x less than 0, that's where you would be below the x-axis. Because again, y less than 0 means your negative y values. Negative y values are below the x-axis. On the next page, we're back to domain. But this time we're looking at the domain and range in terms of a graph. And I think it's a little easier to see it with a graph. Based off the graph, find the domain. The domain are your x values. And we're going to do the x values in interval notation. where do I start the graph in terms of the x-axis? So kind of like right here at -1. And where do I stop? The x is going to be, what, 1, 2, 3, 4? All right. So the domain goes from 1 to 4. Those are your x values from x equals, I'm sorry, -1. It's a -1 there, to +4. And because there's solid dots on them, that's why I'm using brackets. All right, this is x to x, small to big. The range are your y values, small to big y values. So here I'm looking at from this low y value to this high y value. So the y value starts at -1. Oops. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Starts at -1 and goes all the way up to 1, 2, 3. Brackets on both ends, because again, they're solid dots. All right, those are on the graph. Okay. Using this graph, there's a whole bunch of questions on this one. All right, so starting with what is h of -2? So again, this is the x. So I go on the x-axis to -2, and how high up do I have to go? And what comes out is the y value that I'm looking for. Y is 1. When x, so go on the x-axis to 0, your y value is -1. X is 2. The y value is 1, 2, 3. And when the x is 3, you're up to 4. So really you're just generating points. The point -2, 1 is on the graph. -2, 1. Right? It's just a fancy way of writing it up. The domain of this function, so we're going from our first x value to our last x value. And our first x value is at -3, right here. And our last x value is here at 4. The range is the lowest to the highest. And that's going to be your y values. So lowest y in -1 all the way up to 4. Okay, and again, brackets on both ends. Notice the first number on both of these are the small numbers. The second number is the big one. Okay, when you give interval notation, that should be the case. Small first, big second. Letter G is a little different. This is saying the values of x for which h of x equals 3. So h of x is another name for y. So we're saying when y is 3, what are your x value or values? So come up here to the y equals 3, kind of draw yourself in a little line here. And where are those x values where that line hits the graph? Well, one is right here at x equals -3. All right, but I claim there's a couple more. You've got one right here where it hits at x equals, what, 2? And then a third one here at x equals 4. Got a lot of stuff drawn in here. Let me erase off some stuff. All right, so now for letter H, you're looking for the values of x for which h of x is less than or equal to 3. So when it's an inequality, we're looking for an interval. Like what interval, is this going to happen? Well, here is our y equals 3 line. All right, we want to be less than or equal to 3. We want to be below the line. So notice I'm below here, where I'm kind of shading in, below, 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 below. But also equals 3, on the line. I'm on the line, I'm on the line, oh look, over here, I'm on the line. All right, so how do I indicate that? Well, again, the interval where I'm below, I don't sit here and go, well, it's -3, -2, -1. It's from -3 all the way over to +2, it looks like. Brackets on both ends. All right, because of the equal symbol. But then we still have this singleton point right here at 4. And I don't put that in a bracket because it's not an interval. And I don't use a parenthesis because it's a solid dot. So the way that we indicate this singleton point is by using a brace. All right. So this tells somebody from x is -3 all the way over to +2, you're below the line y = 3, and then you're on the line here at that singleton point 4. You're also on the line between at -3 and 2 because you got the brackets on both of those. So that's what that means. Like, draw you in a line, and then where are you below that line or on it?